Good evening, Mayhemers. So, what are your thoughts on how machines should be allowed to decide whether or not they kill certain people in the upcoming age of artificial intelligence and autonomous machines? You're probably asking yourself, why the hell is this guy even asking this question? Well, I do have a good reason for why I'm asking this question. So a few weeks ago, I had an interesting discussion on Facebook. I don't remember what page it was on, but they were talking about the study that was released by MIT. There's a data collection effort from a website or whatever called the Moral Machine. And what it is, apparently, their software engineers are working on machine learning algorithms for self-driving cars. What the website looks like is it's a user based thing where you can kind of go in and you go through these several different scenarios that are like forced choice scenarios as to whether if the car has no other choice, does it strike an old woman in the road in front of it, or does it veer off into another lane and hit it? There's a baby there, right? The car has to make this A or B decision, whether it's going to kill an old woman or a baby, or whether it's going to kill one person or four or five people that are crossing the street. It is based on the classical trolley problem. Basically, what it is that the trolley problem starts off. You are standing at the side tracks, and there's an out of control runaway trolley coming down the tracks, and you are standing there by the lever, and you have the choice of whether to divert the trolley into one track, which has a single person tied to the track or otherwise incapacitated, or let it keep going forward and run over like a group of people on the other track. So, this has been a classical thought experiment in ethics. And they used this to sort of inform their website. So, basically, you have several variations of this classical trolley problem on MIT's website about these self driving vehicles. So basically, does it strike a median? Does it strike a person crossing the street? Does it decide to run over one or four people? And the conversation was interesting. I was really resistant at first. I was really having trouble answering this question. And in this conversation, I made several points. I was like, well, with our current vehicles being what they are, even with humans behind them, yeah, we have accidents, but our braking systems are fairly efficient. And if we have an automated intelligence behind, the wheel, it seems like it should be able to bring the vehicle to a stop before it reaches that point. Um, and the other people in the conversation are like, Justin, you're not seeing the point. Justin, you're not solving the problem. Quit avoiding the issue. And I'm like, well, I don't think I'm avoiding the issue. I'm kind of just curious as to why we're all voting on these A, B scenarios as to how these cars are going to kill people, and why has it come to that? Isn't there some sort of other thing? So obviously, my thought on the highly advanced braking system or more sensors or whatever, it seems like this should be avoidable. Because I mean, when a human being is driving down the road, nine chances out of 10, if they see something like that coming, the human being is just gonna drive off the road or run into a margin or something like that. And I don't really understand why um, that's not really hugely included in this, uh, dilemma. But apparently, it's something that needs to be done to make this program run efficiently, or so they say. So the conversation went on, and I kept kind of coming back to these points as to about why it's not an A or a B situation, or why you know a self-driving car could do many other things besides get itself stuck in this scenario where it's running over one or another kind of person. I kept getting accused of being, I don't know, obtuse, or I wasn't getting I just wasn't getting the point according to the people I was conversing with. But that changed over time because I had a few points of my own to make, and that is, first of all, what happens when the software malfunctions and it detects this sort of fatalistic condition because there's an old woman walking on the side of the road and there happens to be a baby in the same proximity, and it triggers these sensors, and it has to make a decision at that point in time whether it's going to smash one or smash the other. Well, they nobody really had an answer for that. And I don't know about any of you guys, but if you've driven a vehicle any time in like the past 10 years, these computers they malfunction and they malfunction sometimes on a very, very grand scale. I drive a 2008 Acadia and I swear that, just hitting a raccoon or something causes the entire computer system to malfunction and it puts the vehicle in limp mode until I replace the sensor or some other set of esoteric steps, but that's besides the point. So back to this trolley problem. So what MIT did was, this website was put out, as something for the entire world to answer, and they've got something, a million plus answers from multiple countries. So they've collected a lot of data about how different societies would want these machines to make these decisions, right? Collectivist societies prefer probably for the machine to kill the one over the many. Other societies had reasons for choosing the old woman or choosing the baby. And to me, it is interesting to a point, but there was a bit of this that I found disturbing, and where I turned this conversation around was by making the point, like once this gets out of the hands of some idealistic MIT engineers and goes into production, the way that those cars are ultimately going to be forced to choose to make those decisions are going to be based on the mandates and guidelines of insurance companies and automobile manufacturers, which is probably going to be dictated by their actuarial scientists, and those decisions, I believe, especially in America, are ultimately going to be chosen based on monetary loss and damage mitigation. So then you have to ask yourself some questions about how these cars could possibly be programmed. For instance, in the old woman versus baby problem, you have the road veers off into two lanes. The car can't otherwise, for some reason, stop, and it has to choose between killing an old woman and killing a baby. Now, this is long after the automobile has been put out into production, and actuaries and regulators and administrators have gotten their hands on this software, and we're post production at this point. What happens when the machine calculates something based on, okay, the old woman has, let's say, a $200,000 life insurance policy and an estate, and the newborn baby has a $20,000 life insurance policy, right? Which one is the greater amount of financial loss to the insurance company? Because I'm going to pretty much guarantee you that that's how these cars are ultimately going to be making these so-called moral decisions. Um, and there's really not a clean way to answer that. And I think that that's sort of the deeper aspect to this modern day trolley problem. And it is kind of a hellish thought. And that's why we're on this trolley ride through hell tonight. So we're going to keep going a little bit further when we're thinking about this. So, I mean, part of my revulsion to this conversation when I was having it on Facebook was just the thought that, over a million people have already cast their votes. And I'm sure that it was like, they clicked on the website. It was novel. Oh, what a cool thing to think about. I'm going to click on this. This is what I think should happen. Blah, 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 blah. Well, a million plus people have already done that and probably given MIT some really good data about how their cars should kill people in different countries. Um, the thing I wonder about is how many people have gotten on this thing and clicked out of pure novelty and not considered any of the things that I've already started talking about. You know, um, I don't know. I think it reminds me of sort of like Jeff Goldblum's character in Jurassic Park, where, his science was so concerned about whether or not it could, it never stopped to think about whether or not it should. And the reason I'm going there is because, in terms of ethics, everybody who's conducting science and experiments and all that have to go through rigorous ethical training and go through an awful lot of certification processes to carry out and pull off research. It seems like there might be a little bit of a gray area there in terms of engineering and software design because they're not currently not testing on human subjects. It's more of a theoretical and mathematical thing until they actually produce a machine. And I don't really know what processes it goes through from there before it actually ends up getting released into the commercial marketplace. But obviously, I'm having some concerns about it. The thing that ultimately ended up turning this conversation around, and when people started being like, "Oh, I didn't even think about that," when I was like, "Look, these researchers at MIT have control of it for as long as they have control of it, right? But when it comes to commercial production and design, there are a lot of intertwined interests at stake. If I were, a representative of a large, insurance broker, and I'm like, in order for me to insure one of these smart vehicles you're putting out, I need to know that it's making decisions that aren't going to be costing my corporation millions of dollars every year, because we insure a lot of old ladies. We insure a lot of babies too, but old ladies are definitely worth more money. Um, Obviously, there's also going to have to be some considerations the machine would have to make in terms of mitigating property damage and loss and things like that. So, of course, the automotive manufacturers are going to have to manufacture these vehicles in a way that is, excuse me, insurable, for these insurance companies. I mean, obviously, the first wave of these things are going to be probably marketed to the very rich, and I don't see them immediately taking over all of our highways anytime soon. But I mean, it could eventually happen. I mean, we haven't even really seen a true takeover of the electric vehicle yet, and that was supposed to be a thing. Well, it didn't really turn out to be as much of a thing as they had predicted. So when I'm thinking about this sort of trolley ride we're taking, when I'm thinking about this self-driving autonomous vehicle, I mean, it does sound pretty neat, but it also kind of sounds a little weird. I mean, is it an automobile accident if the machine is choosing which person it kills? Because I'm pretty sure that's not how humans have to operate. When we're in the situation of getting into a car accident, our nervous system takes over and we are stomping the brakes. We're steering off to the side of the road and trying absolutely just not to die ourselves, and B, trying not to kill anyone else. Because not only does that end us up feeling horrible for some reason or another, but it also ends up jacking up our insurance rates or getting us, into legal problems or one of any other several other possibilities that could be uh, resulting from that. So obviously, the machine isn't going to have some of those considerations that it has to make, but you gotta think what is the definition of an accident at that point. There will never be an automobile accident in the era of self-driving cars. Every death is going to be a decision. Okay, so that's something to think about there. Think about the fact that a couple of million people have already cast their votes on this without even considering some of the extra implications of what they're doing. Or think about the fact that these engineers, they're probably not thinking entirely that much about it either. I mean, they're probably thinking about safety for sure, or there's probably a whole team of people dedicated to that. But in terms of this moral machine, okay, this thing that is being put out there for, I don't know, novelty or whatever purpose it's being put out there for these cars to decide in which ways that they kill people. Um, what is it really that's happening there? I mean, is that something that's being done in the name of progress, or is that something that's just being done because it can be? And truly, is it morality? I mean, is morality always a calculation? I mean, I'm sure that could be argued that it is. But I think for human beings, morality is also tied in intrinsically with intuition. And I don't know that machines will be capable of intuition anytime soon. So a decision making heuristic and morality to me don't seem to be the same thing. But it seems to me that we're equating morality with this decision making heuristic. And it's interesting because in real life, in the life of humans or whatever, decisions are never as simple as excluding one thing and choosing another thing. There's always context. There's always the circumstance. There's always the environment. There's always judgment. There's always something in there that sort of informs morality. It's sort of like something that funnels into a decision. Whereas This is more of a logic gating situation where it's A, B, maybe C. And I don't think that they put up there the option that the car should do nothing. At least then, tragic deaths caused by automobiles would still be accidents instead of choices. I mean, how many babies are going to have to get murdered before the public decides like, no, it should be choosing the old women instead? We don't care if it costs the insurance company this many millions of dollars extra per year, but we want it to kill the old women and not the babies. I mean, I could certainly see that kind of being the situation here. People here seem to really value the life of the young over the life of the old. I mean, look at what we do for our young people versus what we do for our old people. There's a big difference between how much we invest in those two different parts of our society. So when I'm thinking about this, and when I'm thinking about this trolley problem, and I'm thinking about what this actually means, where are we as a society or as a globe right now where so many people are willing to just submit to the idea that morality is a forced choice scenario, or that it's a decision heuristic. I mean, we have absolutely no evidence that computation is the sum total of what the human mind does. And if it does, it doesn't do it in the same way that our computers do. Not even close. So since when is fatality from an automobile accident something about novelty and choice, and how is it culture bound? I can see the point of kind of what they're doing, because I guess if it has to be done, it has to be done, right? We have to make machines that choose how to kill people. Hopefully when this all comes out, hopefully those kinds of situations will be rare, or if they ever occur at all. But if they do start occurring, what is going to be the answer? What is going to be the answer of why the life of a child is worth more than the life of an old woman, or why are four lives worth more than one? I mean, what if those were four people that weren't living up to their potential in life and the one person was? What if the one person was worth $1 million and the four people were only worth $20,000 apiece? Who is making the call? The machine really is only acting out according to a learning heuristic. It's not actually making its own choice. It's having its choices to be informed by who knows what kind of interests. I mean, I don't know everything about government and corporations and regulations and that sort of thing, but I can tell you that there's a lot of layers of bureaucracy in all aspects of life as we know it in today's society. And by the time it hits production, you are going to have actuaries involved in the process. You're going to have insurance, you know, being a factor. You're going to have monetary loss becoming a bigger deciding factor than human life. And the reason it isn't right now is because accidents are random tragedies. They're accidents. We have no way of predicting or controlling them. With a self-driving vehicle, obviously, not only do we have that ability, but we have the ability to a great degree, influence about how those choices are made through programming. And the real question is, um, how much is that morality piece actually going to be a hallmark feature of the final AI software production? Like, is that really going to be the linchpin of how they're going to sell this to the public? Well, these cars are good cars. They're fucking moral. They're exactly what your culture wants and exactly what your culture asked for. It's gonna kill these four people instead of this one person. It's exactly the way you guys wanted it, right? Well, what happens if you have two 36-year-old men? One is 140 pounds and one is 180 pounds. The 140-pound man is a non-smoker and he's very healthy, and the 180-pound man is a smoker and slightly less healthy. Now, I can see that this could be one situation where Your philosophical do-gooders and your moral decision making as a human being is going to line up perfectly with that of an insurance actuary, because quite simply, the car's decision is going to be to take out the less healthy person, all right? Both from a moral and economic standpoint. In real life, though, we don't make those kinds of decisions. We run that car straight into a fucking wall. We do that for animals, so of course we do that for humans, and human life is still lost. But the simple fact of the matter is that when we're doing it, it's not always a choice. It's an accident. So what are we going to call it in the future? It's like oh, so and so died from an unlucky draw from an automotive choice, or how the fuck you would say that? Like, yeah, the car got him. Poor bastard. Yeah, no, it totally let somebody just like him live. What happens if you have identical twins on either side of those roads? How does the car choose between identical twins? How advanced are the sensors? Is it going to be able to pull real-time data about what kind of insurance people are carrying? Does it have facial recognition? There's a lot of really interesting thoughts that I think need to kind of go into this idea, because I don't think it's going to be as simple as whether one society values the young over the old, or whether one society values males over females, or the fat over the skinny, or skinny over the fat. Is the car going to choose transgendered individuals over cis individuals? How's that decision going to be made? Can it detect that? I don't know exactly how advanced they're going to try to go with this, but if it can distinguish between a baby and an 85-year-old woman, we would assume then that it can sort of distinguish between humans, right? Or is it just going to get really confused? What if you have 250-pound males on either side? Does it just not make a decision then? Is it still a fucking accident? I don't know. I think that people see what they see on the internet, and they want to react to it. And it's worded in such a way as it's a click and react environment that we live in. It's not a think We're not in a thinking age of humanity right now. We're in a reactionary age of humanity, and it's not even real reactions. It's not passionate reactions. It's I'm reacting so that the rest of the internet that's seeing this little moment in time can react to my projected persona about how I want people to believe I'm reacting. That should probably be a whole different fucking video. But the simple fact of the matter is, I thought that it was a really interesting conversation on Facebook. It was enough to inspire me to make this segment tonight. Um, and I want to know what you guys think. What do you think, on this problem? Go to the moral machine, Google moral machine, and you will be brought to the MIT website. Now remember, not voting is a fucking option, all right? And probably at this point, the most ethical option that you can have. But if you're really curious, you can actually go in and do these scenarios and add to their database, and maybe that's the more important thing to do. I guess I'm not really sure. And the way the conversation ultimately turned out was I made a really good case about why I chose not to fucking put my 2 cents into that whole thing. Because it doesn't really matter what this data comes up with, because ultimately the decision-making heuristic is going to be decided by other interests than the people that are designing the software currently. And I think a little bit of thinking about that, and most people would probably agree. Um, because who the heck's gonna put insurance on a car that decides to make more expensive instead of less expensive kills? So yeah, I don't think that that's going to be the thing. And now we're kind of moving toward the end of our flaming trolley ride through our fucking nightmarish existence, and I don't know. When I think about whether or not this problem even makes sense, I don't know if it does. I don't know if it does. I've certainly never been stuck on the side tracks, but I might be stuck in a self-driving car one of these days, and I don't know how I would want my car to make decisions. If I thought things were getting a little bit fucked up, I might want a manual override so that I could do my best to fucking run it into a wall or a tree or off a cliff in order to not have to make that decision. And maybe that's dumb of me, but that's where my morality goes with it. I was told during this conversation, well, gee, it's a really good fucking thing that you're not in charge of programming this fucking software because everybody would be getting killed based on their financial value. And I'm like, look, I'm not a proponent of what I'm saying. I'm not a proponent of insurance companies having the ultimate decision on that. I'm just trying to be realistic. I mean, who the fuck is going to be the one who ultimately chooses how these cars decide, right? And I think considering that, maybe it needs to be something that these scientists and these engineers need to wrap their heads around as well, is that just because it seems neutral, technological, and mathematical doesn't mean it actually is going to be neutral, right? Any object, any weapon in and of itself is nothing. It's neutral. It's not until it's picked up and used that it becomes weaponized. The question is, though, well, I guess one of many fucking questions, should this technology be developed in the first place? And if so, should it be developed based on this specific heuristic? I don't know. I don't know. It seems to me like maybe there should be another way, or maybe the vehicle needs to have a way to kill itself, right? To just stop. Whether it shoves a fucking giant steel plate down into the road to literally just stop the vehicle in its tracks or rip it apart at its frames or whatever. I don't really see why it has to make a choice between one or many or old and young or fat and skinny or cis versus trans or whatever, because I mean that's what it's going to come down to. There's going to be all of these really weird, highly nuanced things that are going to happen after it hits production, and people are going to start realizing that monetary value is definitely deeply associated with certain demographic characteristics, and they're going to wonder why in the hell these choices keep being made. And the simple fact of the matter is that it saves insurance dollars. Okay, and that's ultimately going to be, I think, the way this whole thing shakes out. So thanks for putting up with me tonight. This is my head game number two. And if you have any other ideas or solutions to this idea, definitely comment, like, share. Definitely hit the subscribe button below because we need more subscribers. But that being said, have a good evening and farewell.